Well, hello everyone. Welcome to this week's Midweek Moment. In our old home back in Chicago, we had this air vent that connected our bathroom and our closet, and it sat on a wall. And I'll never forget the day that my boys discovered that they could go in the closet and yell through the air vent. I was blow drying my hair, and all of a sudden I heard these tiny little voices yelling, "Hey mommy, can you hear me?" And I moved in close to the air vent and I said, "I can hear you." And they just giggled and giggled and giggled. They were so stunned that I could actually hear them, and we went back and forth for several minutes. But could you imagine if I always talked to my boys through this air vent? It would get old really fast. Truly, there is nothing like taking my boys, putting them on my lap, and looking them in the eyes and having a one-on-one heartfelt conversation. I think sometimes we treat our prayer life as though there is this barrier or a dividing wall. We call out, "Hey God, are you there? Can you even hear me?" And we believe that there's some sort of separation. And a prayer life like that would get exhausting and it would get old. If there's anything that I've learned about walking with God, it's a God that does hear. It's a God where the dividing wall and the barrier has been torn down. And so it's not, "Hey God, are you out there? Can you hear me?" But it's instead just this deep abiding belief that God is near, that God does bend an ear, that God does hear. And the more that we begin to trust and pray and believe in the nearness of God in our prayers, the more that God begins to shape our heart like God's heart. The more that our heart begins to break for the things that God's heart breaks for, the more that we begin to have the mind of Christ and see the world through the lens of God. This last week, we just completed our series, People of the Resurrection, where we ended with the ascension of our Lord Jesus. And this coming Sunday is a glorious Sunday, Pentecost. Well, between the ascension and Pentecost, the disciples gathered together in a room and began to pray. In Acts chapter 1, verses 12 through 14, it says this. It says, "Then the apostles returned to Jerusalem from the hill called the Mount of Olives, a Sabbath day walk from the city. When they arrived, they went upstairs to the room where they were staying. Those present were Peter, John, James and Andrew, Philip and Thomas, Matthew, James, Simon the Zealot, and Judas, son of James. And they were all together constantly in prayer." They were all joined together constantly in prayer, along with the women and Mary, the mother of Jesus, and with his brothers. They were all joined together constantly in prayer. And I highly doubt that when they were constantly in prayer, they were calling out, "God, are you there? Can you hear me? Are you anywhere?" But instead, I have a sense that when they prayed, they knew that something profound had happened and that something profound was about to happen. And that they trusted and believed in the nearness of God, the God that turns and bends an ear, the God that moves in and hears their prayers. And as they were gathered together constantly in prayer, I believe that their hearts were being aligned with the heart of God. I'm sure that they prayed for many things, and I also believe that they prayed for the future and the mission of the church. So it got me thinking, what is your prayer life like? Do you believe in the God that bends an ear? And do you too pray for the future and the mission of the church? And do you pray in such a way that you can trust and know that God bends an ear, listens, and hears our prayers? Well, that's all for this week's Midweek Moment. See you on Sunday.